counties. We're going to start off with a 2014 tax assessment here. On this particular property here, the reason being market value update. It went from $47,500 to $47,590. It's on a property in Carroll. And this is your assessment that you should have received. This is what you need to work from to file your appeal. And the first thing you're going to need to do is find a realtor that will be your friend or pay an independent appraiser. Most independent appraisers charge, give or take, $50 to do your comps for you for your neighborhood and surrounding area. If you got a realtor, some of those, if they're real nice, you take them to lunch at Longhorn, they will run them possibly for you. But you've got to get a source to run your comps. Excuse me. That is your hardest thing to do a tax appeal, is to find a source to run comps. Because not everybody has access to getting the comps. And when you're doing a 2014 tax appeal, you need to use 2013 sales, the prior year. You can use the prior 2 years, but it's best to use the prior year sales. And this one here, this is one we ran on that particular property. These are the 2013 sales. I will point out something here that's starting to hurt all of us. Just about all of these properties were listed at $50,000. You've got a property here, it was listed at $50,000, but it sold for $65,000. People are starting to outbid each other to get properties, which means we're going to somewhat pay an inflated price because they're fighting over the houses now. So some of that is going to get injected into changing our prices of our houses. But from here, what I would do, once I got my listings here, the next thing I would do is you got to go to the Paulding County Assessor's site, go to the appraiser. But the problem you got in Paulding is, to get to the Q Public Information, you have to be a member. And I would encourage all of you to call your commissioner in the county to try to get them to put this service online. Because all surrounding counties in Metro Atlanta area, you can research all the tax documents online free of charge. And one thing, I'm Roy Sparks. I am a tax, they consider me a tax rep. I do appeals for people, plus I teach people how to do appeals. And on the Q Public, if you get 4 people to join, it's at $300. One person's $120, and you can also do a 1-day deal and a 1-month deal, just to do 1 day and 1 month to get online to research. And then what you want to do is get online and research most of these and find the one that's most comparable to your house. You want square footage to be similar, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and basically the typical type floor plan and house you got. Because a lot of neighborhoods, in 2 or 3 neighborhoods, the houses will all be the same, just a different color. So you gotta get your comps. That's going to be your hardest thing to do, is get comps. Once you get your comps, you got to sit down and do some arithmetic, figure out what the house is sold for. You got to come up with a value that you feel like is reasonable for your property. This is your appeal assessment form. This is the one typically used in Paulding County. You'll fill out all your information. There's 2 ways you can typically appeal a house. You can go on value and uniformity, and sometimes you can go on both. Sometimes I do both, sometimes I do either or, whichever one helps prove my point. Because your goal is, the tax appraiser's trying to get you up here, and you trying to get yourself here, and you hope to get in here in the reasonable middle somewhere. But on this form here, you'll note if this appeal form is signed by an agent, a letter of authorization must accompany the filing of the appeal. And also, the note down here at the bottom, filing of this document will create a review of the county's value of your property. which means when you file an appeal, they are subject to visiting the property. They'll relook at everything. If you've got a new roof, if you've got a new deck on the back, or something you've added, then they're going to up your value for changes they find. Anybody got any questions on this form? I'll speak to any of you after the meeting, but this is your appeal form that goes in, and down on the bottom here, you'll put previous year value, you'll put your return value or what you feel like the property is worth. And you'll show the current year value also.
Where do you get those?
These can be got from the county site or the county. There's multiple ways to get the appeal form.
Okay.
James, isn't it available on the site? Can't you download it? All right, that was a Paulding County appeal form. Douglas County has a little bit different form. Basically the same stuff. They get a little bit more intense. They still you got to have a letter of authorization. Same thing, filing this document will create a review of your property. Douglas County takes it a step further. They got a lot of questions they prefer you answer. What do you believe the value of property was as of 1/1/2014? And they want you to tell them all the reasons why. I typically never answer anything on this page. I save that for BOE. Any questions on that one? That's Douglas County. All right, here's a letter of authorization. If you decide to have a tax rep, me or somebody else, you basically give them authorization to represent you at the county to get your values lowered. All right, what I'm going to do now is walk you through a 2013 appeal from start to finish, the appeal I did in 2013. This property was in Hiram, 409 Main Street. The county had the value at $77,600. Must have hit a nerve. County had value set at $77,600. I filed an appeal. The appeal form, current value $77,600. I asked for $60,000 is what I said the property is worth. Next things happen, you either get a notice of a change or a notice of no change. On this particular property, I got a notice of a change, a 30-day notice of assessment change. Now beware on all your documents that you receive, you need to closely read every document. Because if you ignore this document, you will lose your right to appeal. Here it says, if you wish to file an appeal, you must do so in writing no later than 30 days after the date of this notice. Most people say, well, I've already filed an appeal. You did file an appeal, but they made a change, and they're wanting you to basically accept the change. If you don't accept the change, you fill out another appeal form because you still want another value. All right, they did lower the property from $77,600 to $73,200. But knowing stubborn Roy, I still wasn't happy. I filed another appeal. I still asked for $60,000 on this appeal. Then you get another notice. A lot of paperwork. So I suggest every one of you, when you do an appeal, start a file for that particular appeal. This is a no change notice that basically says they reviewed it, reason for appeal, market value, they viewed it and made no further change. The next document you get, you will be getting a document telling you when your Board of Equalization hearing is and the date of your hearing. The next document you will probably get is you'll get a letter asking you for all of your evidence or witnesses that you're going to present at Board of Equalization. The county wants you to supply them with all the evidence that you're going to lay on the table. I don't mind providing my evidence. That's not a problem. But I also turn right around and I write a letter to them. Well, first of all, I give them my evidence. I give them either the parcel number or the address. You don't have to explain the evidence, just tell them what you're going to use for evidence. And like I said, you can either use parcel numbers or addresses. Now you can tell I'm working hard on this one. I got about 9 or 10 properties I'm using on this one property. So I give my evidence and I turn right around and I write a letter that says I want their evidence. And we basically play a checker game moving back and forth. I'm asking for their evidence. And of course, I got a lot of properties that I do, so this is the same property you've seen over there, the same property. I ask for all of the evidence here. And typically, they will either bring it to you by email or you go pick it up or whatever. One thing I will caution you on, if you deliver anything by hand at any county, if you file an appeal by hand or you take your evidence up by hand, make sure you get a stamped copy that they received it and the date. Paulding County has never been a problem, but some of the other counties, I've had a lot of my paperwork never show up when I hand deliver it. So make sure you got documentation that you emailed it or you hand delivered it. All right, then you go to the Board of Equalization. And let me explain the process of the Board of Equalization to you. Board of Equalization is a group of people that's appointed by the grand jury. Basically, summing it up, Board of Equalization is like going to a miniature court. You walk into a room and there's 3 people sitting on the other side of the table, and sometimes they have an alternate sitting on the side. You got a chairman and 2 members. It's you and the appraiser or you and 2 appraisers. You never know, based on the property, you might have 2. I have had as high as 3 and 4 appraisers fighting me on one property, which is fine. The checker game just gets bigger. So, and what you always want to do is request the county prove their value first. State law says they must prove their value that they've placed on your property. Their side is to prove first. Always let them request they go first. Some people try to tell you to go first or whatever. State law says you can make that option. Request they present first. Because a lot of times in what they present, I have had them to present evidence that helped me. I did one in Douglas County that I was fighting against $32,000 an acre. The appraiser laid a tax map on the table to show all the property around me similar to mine, but he failed to point out the one across the street that was at $12,000 an acre. So I brought it to his attention. His evidence actually made my case for me. BOE dropped my property to $12,000 an acre. Of course, they took me to Superior Court too. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So you go to Board of Equalization, both of you make your case. You can question each other, you can rebuttal each other, just like in court. You can ask him questions, he can ask you questions. You can make comments about his evidence, he can make comments about your evidence. But you reach a point that both of you shut up. And one thing you need to always do, when the BOE goes into deliberation to make their decision, always ask to be present for the deliberation. Because if somebody's talking about me, I want to be sitting there. Always tell them you want to be present, that you'll come back if you need to. And another thing I always request them to do is to go ahead and do deliberation immediately after we present, so it's fresh on their mind. Year before last, I did 32 appeals in Douglas County, and one day I started at 9:30 that morning and went to 4:30 that afternoon. We do one. They do the deliberations all day long. But if we'd have did 32 and then they've done a deliberation on 32 appeals, how much would they have remembered? About 2% of it. So always request them to immediately do their stuff and get everything done in front of you. And another thing, once they start doing their deliberation, or what do you, there's a lot of things you can call what they do, but at that point, you shut up. You can't say anything, the appraiser can't speak, both of you's got to sit and go silent until they make their decision, and you say thank you, whatever it is. They've done their decision. All right, once they made their decision, eventually, somewhere along the way, and understand, guys, this whole process takes months. It does not happen in a day or two. I still have 2012 appeals that are not settled in Douglas County from 2012. And they just sent out 2014. And so they do get entangled, they get tied up, and sometimes they'll take you to court if you get it lowered more than they think you should. Either party in the appeal process, if you don't like the decision of BOE, either one of you can appeal to Superior Court. Now, whoever appeals to Superior Court has to pay the court fee. And not many people are going to go to court because court fee can go anywhere from $300 to $500 based on whatever county you're in. I have been stubborn and went to court a few times. Here, Douglas, and a few other counties. But normally, if you get filed to go to court, you've got to go to mediation. And typically, you'll settle in mediation because neither one of you really want to pay that attorney. And like I normally tell the county, I welcome you paying my attorney. I generally use one that costs about $3.50 an hour. So I want somebody to pay him besides me. But you'll get a tax bill in the process. Paulding County puts a stamp on theirs here. It's just a red stamp that tells you while your property is under appeal, you only have to pay 85% of the taxes due. Now, Douglas County, some of you from Douglas County, they go ahead and compute out 75% of the assessed value, and they only bill you for 85% of the assessed value. So it messes up your arithmetic, and a lot of people get confused. I'd much rather everybody just put a stamp on there and send you the full bill. This right here is less confusing. Because when you go ahead and do the 85% and send them the bill, and then they have to pay more when they lose or get a little bit back, it kind of confuses everybody. You know, some of us from Alabama, we like simple arithmetic. All right, this is a Carroll County form here. This is a Carroll County no change letter, where basically they said they've looked at it and made no change in it, and they go ahead and forward it to the Board of Equalization. But I'm telling you serious, I don't care what county you're in, every document you get, read everything on the document. Because you can get down here in the line and say if you don't file by this date, you lose your right to appeal. So read the document start to finish. All right, here's a Douglas County no change letter. Basically says they've made no change in the property, left it where it was at. This is a Douglas County 30-day notice that they made a change. Notice on this one, when Douglas County sends you a change, they also ask you for all your evidence. And a lot of people get scared when they start wanting all their evidence. They like, oh, they fixing to get tough on me. Give them your evidence. Don't worry about it. They don't know how you're going to present it. If I tell you I'm going to come paint your house red, white, and blue, you don't know what part's going to be red, what white, and what's blue. So give them your evidence. Don't let this intimidate you and scare you. And one thing I'll point out, don't let this process intimidate you. Follow through on all your documents. Keep up with your documents. Never get intimidated by the process. And when you go visit some counties and some appraisers are nice, some of them are not quite so nice. They look at you like, why are you questioning my ability? Well, I question a lot of people's ability. They question mine too, that's fine. So in Douglas County, when you get your change notice, Notice here, deadline to appeal the Board of Equalization is now 10/17. I wish to further my appeal to the Board of Equalization, so you've got to sign and send another form in, because if you don't, you lose your right to appeal when they make that change. In every county, it's just a little bit different. Here's the famous one you really don't want to get. This one here is where I represented this property here. I got the property lowered from $120,000 to $30,000. The house sits in a floodplain. If the house burnt down, they couldn't build it back. They can't sell the house. They have a family member that rents the house. Well, Douglas County didn't like it because I got it lowered to $30,000, so they're appealing to Superior Court. This is for, trying to find the year we're on, this is for the
2012.
2012. You can see here it went from 107,050 to 32, a 70% reduction. They're not happy. All right. Let me tell you another thing that happened. All right, they appealed in the Superior Court for 2012. While I got an appeal in, if it hadn't been settled, the next year comes up, I'll go ahead and appeal the next year. All right, on this property, I went ahead and appealed 2013. I go back before the Board of Equalization, been a couple of months ago, same board I had before, and I said, guys, here's my notice they're taking me to court for last year for 2012. What do y'all want to do with 2013? It's the same house, it's in the floodplain, so BOE put it back at the same price again. Now I've received the notice they're going to take me to court for 2013. But they've never taken me for 2012. We're still waiting on 2012 to go to court. So the whole process can get kind of miffed out, and it will get aggravating to you and somewhat intimidating to you. But do not let it intimidate you. It is your right to file an appeal. And I encourage everybody to do the process. And another thing, Board of Equalization is an open public meeting. If you're going to file an appeal and you've never done it, I would urge you to find out a day they're going to have BOE hearings and go sit in on some hearings so you'll know the process and how it works. So the day you go, you won't be totally green on what's going on. And like I said, every county is a little bit different. I've been in probably 7 counties from here to Fannin and back. And another thing that you can do is if you ask for their evidence and they don't provide it, you can kindly ask the chairman of BOE to disallow their evidence. Now they can allow it and disallow it, but most every time I've ever asked for the evidence to be disallowed, it has been disallowed because it wasn't provided to me by Georgia state law. Georgia state law says they must provide their evidence to you if you ask for it in the timely manner per the law. I have probably 3 or 4 different appeals to where I asked BOE to kindly disallow the appraiser's information because it wasn't provided to me in a timely manner. They look at you kind of strange because most of them have never had this to happen. But if you read the state law, and you can go in and find a lot of your state laws, and if you're going to appeal one property, it's one thing, but if you own multiple properties, I would encourage you to dig into some of the state law of how the Board of Equalization operates, what procedures they operate under. And you got the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, you got a lot of different bills because you need to know the law. Because a lot of times they don't know the law. Some of them are ignorant of some of the laws, and I've had to I got a book about this thick that I normally tote with me if I think I'm going to have a problem, and I open it up, here's the law of what you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to be doing it. Most every county they know me in most every county around here. When I walk in the appraisal department, everybody knows me from one county to the other. But one thing about it is, when I walk in those departments, I respect those people. Now, when I get in that BOE room, the boxing gloves are on. I plan to pound you before we get out the door. Now, I'll go out the door and we'll sit and have a cup of tea or Coca-Cola. But in that room, my goal is to get the property value lowered for my customer or me. And the way I got started doing this, guys, I have a lot of rental properties scattered in a lot of counties. And when I first went to BOE, I did not have a clue. It's too high. Why is it too high, Roy? It's just too high. You can't say it's too high. You've got to put evidence on the table. And the better your evidence is, the better your chances of winning. Because, and another thing to consider, when you go to BOE, when the decision's made, it's on a 3-year Board of Equalization lock is what most people call it. So, one way of looking at it today, while they're trying to go up, if you get it locked down for 3 years, you've actually walked away a winner that day. Because you got 3 years, they can't go up. Now, if you make a change in your property, you add something or change something, it opens the door that they can come out and review the property. But as long as you sit there, make no changes, 3 years, they got to live with that value. Hang on, I'm going to let Jason take the microphone around and take questions. Who's got questions?
I do.
Just scream it, we hear you. Who had a question?
I just want to know, what do you charge to do this process?
The way I charge is real simple. I get half of whatever I save you for 1 year. If I save you $100, you pay me $50. If I save you nothing, you pay me nothing. That's about as simple as you can get.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I have a question about comps. Don't they have to be within a certain area? I mean, you can't go get a comp from downtown Dallas if you live in Hiram, right?
That is correct, but what you want to do is start off on like a 2 or 3 mile radius. Normally, you want to stay, if it's in a subdivision, you want to try to stay in that subdivision. But you got some subdivisions that don't have many sales, so you've got to go outside the subdivision and get a similar property. The closer you stay to the property, of like kind of property, the better your evidence is. But sometimes you have to get further out to get that comp. You get out in a rural area, like a house out on 5 acres, it's tough to find a comp, and you're going to have to open a search till you find a comp. Anybody else?
How many cops should you present? What is the good number?
I have gone in with a minimum of 3, or I have gone in with 8 or 9. But if it's a subdivision and you got 3 in the subdivision, and you can stay in the subdivision and it proves the point, those 3 in the subdivision work fine if they're all in the subdivision.
Is it, if they do lower the assessment, is it automatically for 3 years, or do you have an option of it just being for a year, or how does that work?
All right, if you go to BOE and they lower your assessment, the next year you will still get an assessment. On the assessment, it will say BOE value maintained or some verbiage of that nature. You can go back in and open it back up by requesting a different value. You yourself can say, well, the sales have went down this last year, because I've appealed a lot of mine the next year and the next year. So you can go back in the next year and appeal, even though you got BOE decision, you can ask that that be opened up and appealed.
But normally it's just for 3 years.
Yes. Now if you go to mediation, and both of you settle in mediation, you typically settle for 3 years. You and the attorney both agree that you're going to lock it for 3 years, and you're not going to argue it for 3 years, and they're not going to argue it either. So, and another thing that I do, if I represent you, if I have to go to mediation, I also represent you in mediation, because I can mediate. You do not have to be an attorney to mediate with an attorney. Being from Alabama, fighting an attorney, we like it. And I've done more mediation than probably Douglas. I've done some in Polk. And basically what you do is both of you go in, the attorney's sitting across the table from you, And another thing, if a tax rep represents you and you go with him to your hearing, do him a favor. Shut up. Don't talk. Because I've had people I've had to tap on the shoulder, they get personal with it. Understand, when I'm doing a tax appeal, it's a business transaction. I'm doing evidence, they doing evidence. The person that owns the property has their feelings in it. I keep it to a business decision, and they get all ill and upset. You raised the property value on my house, I can't afford it. They get all the personal feelings in it. Well, when I'm presenting, when you're in mediation, you don't need those personal feelings, you need the facts.
Mr. Sparks, I'm a little confused about the market research. It's my understanding in and around Atlanta, some of the counties have a limit to what the county can raise your taxes on. I may be wrong, it's just hearsay that I've heard. I'm looking at some of my properties right here, and I see that I'm faced with an 8% increase on one of them and a 2% on another. And I understand, I have no idea how we got that from last year's issue.
Well, typically they work off of sales just like I do when they do comp sales of your neighborhood. And what you can do is appeal it and ask for their evidence of how they derived at it and what they're going to present at BOE.
So the bottom line of my question is there a limit as to a percentage of what the county?
No, sir. There's some, who in here had the property to go up double? Raise your
Mine's
hand.
at 45.
Okay? So when it goes double, that tells you there's not a limit as to what they can do. Now, they do have to justify it, and you ask for their justification, but when they go double, I try to go the other way. And the matter of the fact is, what you want to do is get your property to what you feel is a fair value. Like a gentleman said earlier, I don't mind paying my fair share, but I don't want to pay somebody else's fair share of taxes. And the problem we got is that the values drop so quick, so fast. Very few counties dropped as fast as the values dropped. I did an appeal, subdivision in Douglasville, Rebel Trails. I've done a lot of appeals in that subdivision. I got a rental house in there. I got it dropped to $34,000. It used to be at about $115,000. A retired couple that lived next door to my rental property, the house was 200 square foot smaller than the house I had. A little plywood siding house. The county had it valued at $80,000. Last year I went to BOE. They had 5 sales in the neighborhood for the year before. The highest sale was $29,000. The other sales were all 24 to 26. So I walked out of BOE with $26,000 value from $80,000. Now it's a retired couple, they don't pay school tax, but still and yet, that couple was happy because a lot of you know I'm somewhat of a political activist. I go jump on the commissioners when they're raising the millage rate. I had been to Douglas County making a speech about the millage rate going up and what they did to us last year. And this lady called me, she said, "Roy, I want to thank you for going and speaking up for people like me." She said, "Me and Jimmy's retired. He's had open heart surgery, got a defibrillator in his chest. He can't even cut the grass anymore. And if they raise my property tax, it will come out of a necessity of life for us." That's the ones that I did their appeal for. I didn't even charge them. Because $80,000 in that neighborhood and all the sales were 26 and 29. I well proved the point when I went to BOE. But here's another problem that came up in that same neighborhood. Most people that buy their houses up or down 30, the year you buy it, the next year they drop it to 30, right? Well, the next year, the appraiser in Douglas County was jumping them all to 80 to 85. I asked him in front of BOE, I said, called him by name, I said, "Man, why do you do this to these people? They buy the house at 30, you give them 1 year at 30, and you turn right around the next year and raise it to 80. He said, "Well, they don't appeal." That was the attitude. I said, "Bernie, let me tell you why they don't appeal. A lot of people go buy a house at $30,000. They're a hard-working country boy, just like a lot of us. They come home from work, the wife's opened the tax assessment. Honey, we paid $30 for this house, and now it's worth $80. Can't sell it for $80. The highest sale in the neighborhood was $29.
Right.
And this is the point of tax appeals and why all of you need to appeal. Everybody, I encourage everybody to appeal your property values if you're not happy with it. And my phone number's back there on the card. You can call me. I'll give you information free. Don't charge. If you got a question, I'll gladly help any of you do your own appeal. Or I got a contract right back here. You decide I'll do it for you. But either way, I will help you and work with you. And I am a tax rep, and I let that be known, but I help a lot of people do their own property tax appeals. I tell them how to do the process, because you are welcome to go do it, and when you walk out of there and get it lowered, it does make you feel better. Now, when you don't win and they leave it the same, you're not quite happy, but go back the next year. Keep working on your value till you get it to where it feels like it's fair. Another thing, how many of you are investors in here that's got multiple properties? People with multiple properties, let me tell you something to think about. If you got multiple properties and you only save $100 per property, that adds up. My rental properties, a lot of them I do every year. I fight them to get it to the bottom, because here's a rule of thumb I got. If I've got a rental house and I get $600 a month, and my taxes are $1,200, we got a problem. If I get $800 a month and I pay $1,600 in taxes, anytime the taxes are more than 1 month's rent, you have a problem with your value. Because when you're taking a month and a half, 2 months rent to pay the property tax, the value is generally out of sync if you're paying that much. And another thing that I didn't bring up, but I'll go ahead and tell you, a lot of people do it. Some counties recognize it, some don't, is if it's investment property, you do the income approach of how much you make on income to prove what the value is from the income approach. And normally you do that on commercial property, but some counties, not all. James, does Pauline recognize that yet on rental properties as far as houses? They do. Some counties still kind of don't want you to bring in the income approach. They don't want to go that way. And another thing to tell you, when you run in comps in your neighborhood, a lot of the Board of Equalizations kind of frown on sales from the bank. Let you into a secret. When the bank forecloses, they take it back. That's a foreclosure. When they give that property to a realtor and he sells it, that is a resale. That's not a foreclosure. And when you got a neighborhood eat up with resales, and you only got one arm's length transaction, what do you think I'm going to argue when I go to BOE? Yes, here's the one arm's length transaction, but 90% of them are bank sales. But a lot of the Board of Equalizations want to hold you to arm's length transactions that, what bank sales, they want to call them bank sales. Well, the majority of what we got going on around here the last 3 years have been bank sales. And Douglas County, 3 and 4 bedroom houses selling for $30,000 to $40,000. That's starting to change. It is changing a little bit, but very few values have doubled. Most of you that it doubled would probably like to sell it for what it went up to. Yes. Anybody got any more questions?
When is it not a good time to lower your assessment? Like, for instance, if you plan on selling within the year or whatever.
All right, if you're planning on selling, good question. I've had a lot of people, no, Roy, don't get it lowered, I'm planning on selling. I said, okay, just go ahead and pay extra tax.
Right.
Because when you get ready to sell, and your buyer goes and signs a contract with you, and they go hire an independent appraiser, what's he going to look at? Comp sales. He doesn't care what the county tax value is. He's going to look at comp sales and the condition of the house. And I know a lot of people that's got commercial property and they're afraid to argue the property value, afraid the bank will pull the note in their loan. I said, well, okay, just go ahead and pay an extra $100,000 in taxes for the next 5 years if you want to, but I want my property valued as it should be. Because when you sell it, I don't care if it's residential, commercial, industrial, it works off of comp sales. Good question. Any more?
Explain that comp sales, what that means. That comparative sales.
Yes, a comp sale, for instance, let's take these first 5 trucks out here. If all of them were Chevrolet trucks, same size truck, just different colors, one had a few accessories different, you want them as comparable as you can to the like kind. You don't want to take a 4-bedroom house against a 3-bedroom house. If it's 1,400 square foot house, I generally try to stay within 80 square foot plus or minus, because you can't get exact. And what I do with my comp sales is I generally look at the heated square foot versus the sales price. And I'll divide up the heated.
To get that comp sale there, you're going to have a real estate agent or access to that.
You've got to find access to get to the comps. That's the biggest hurdle you got. Once you get that hurdle done, and I have a website up here of an independent appraiser that he charges $50 to run your comps for you. But it'd be much easier to take a realtor out to lunch, wouldn't it, and pay $50, go pay $20. And most everybody here, you know a realtor somewhere. You've dealt with a realtor over the latter years. And just try to call a realtor and make a friend and say, here's my house, could you run me the comps? Make sure you ask for the prior year. If you're going 2014, make sure you get 2013 sales.
And if you ask them for the evidence, they should be giving you some comparable sales.
Yes, all right, now let me take that a step further. Once you get your sale, your comparable sales, you want to get on Q Public and print out the county's report card on that property. Don't go to BOE with an MLS listing. When you walk in BOE, you want to have the report card printed from the county's website. You don't want to be using MLS. That could be manipulated or changed. But when you use the report card that the county puts out, that's what you use as your evidence. I take the MLS listing with me, but I back it up with all the report cards from the county that I'm in. It doesn't matter what county it is. Go to their site and research the sales and print that report card. Any more questions?
Can you tell us again where to go to find the forms?
Typically, you can go to the county website. All the websites up here for the different counties. Go to the appraisal department and just look up forms. Or you can go by the county. If you're up to the county, just tell them you want an appeal form. If you can't find it quick, I'll email you one. Tell me what. I just need to know what county you want it for. But just make sure you get it filled out and sent in before your final date. On your assessment will be the last date to file your appeal in the upper right-hand corner. This one here, and now Paulding County, James, did y'all send them all out the same day? All right, now Cobb County does a staggered system. All of theirs are dated different. Different sections of the county are different. Paulding County is July the 14th.
Why is it the millage rate comes out a month after the deadline for the appeals? It seems backwards. Like maybe a lot of people would not bother appealing if, the millage goes down.
Well, let me tell you, if you always appeal, don't worry about the millage rate, because that millage rate 99% of the time is going up. How many times have y'all ever seen the millage rate go down? It's generally going up. And just like a few years ago, Paulding County did a nice little thing, and I went and spoke, and they didn't like me too much. And I told them, I said, what you're doing doesn't compute in Alabama arithmetic. The county administrator sat up there and made a statement, your property taxes went down. They did. Well, my value went down, but you went up on the millage rate. I'm paying more. My value's down. I should be paying less. He still looks at the crowd and says, your taxes didn't increase. Your taxes did increase. All my folks in Alabama figured that one out right quick. If the value goes down, what you pay should go down. But yet they raised the millage rate and want to look at you and say, well, it didn't increase. Well, now watch what happens with the increases you're getting. Look at what your bottom line tax bill is going to be. But yeah, the millage rate, it is somewhat backwards the way they set millage rate. But what I tell everybody, go ahead and appeal it, get the best value you can get, because the millage rate's going to come after either way.
Well, maybe that's why it's after the deadline if it normally goes up. Makes sense.
The wheels of government. But like I told you, keep in mind, guys, I still got 2012 appeals that are still unsettled, which means I can't collect my part until it to work because they're not settled. Now, I will tell you some of the biggest ones I've ever got done, and don't think everybody's going to get this. I did one in Cobb County. It was a 1-acre site. The county had it valued at $750,000. I turned in an appeal for $10,000. They laughed at me. I went over and met with the appraiser, and he said, Roy, we're a long ways apart. $750,000 and you're at 10. I said, we're not that far apart. So in a few days, I got a phone call. They sold the property for $60,000. I called the appraiser back, and I said, we got a little bit closer yesterday. I said, I'll go to 60. How about that? From 10 up to 60. And I said, I'll bring you all the documents to prove it. It was an arm's length transaction. They didn't know each other, handled by a realtor. He said, bring me the documents. So I get the documents, and I hand deliver a lot of my documents. I'm still Alabama style. I don't play with a computer like a lot of people do. I like a lot of hand delivery. So I took it to him, delivered it to him, and a couple of days later I was back over there doing some more appeals of some kind, and he walked up and he said, it's strange you walked up. We just had a meeting about you. I said, am I still doing okay? He said, yeah, we agreed to drop the property to $60,000. He said, I couldn't argue with the arm's length transaction you brought to me. So from $750,000 down to $60,000. That's a drop. It saved the family that had the property, the guy died that actually owned the property, it saved them over, I think, $11,000 or $14,000 because they sold it, so they got money back from the closing because it was prorated on the $750,000. And not all of them are that good, but there are a few in there that I got 100 acres up in, I believe it was Polk County, cut 75%. And I mean, there are properties out there that are bad out of sync. And that's where I come in. Or you come in because you can do your own if you want to. Any more questions?
What about property that's under a covenant? So like a private, say, subdivision, is that taking a bearing, that acreage, and developing further? So
You can, even if it's under conservation or agriculture or whatever, you can still appeal the value.
I did appeal, and then now it's been 3 years, so I have my purchase price, and then $350,000. I really can't do anything else with the property, because I have to have the whole thing with
Right.
Yeah, you just go and do the same thing over again.
Yes.
Does that make it easier case if you have a purchase price that was
You know, the purchase price documented, you need it the year before. If it was the day, if your value that you're arguing is January the 1st, 2014. So all sales have got to be prior to that. If the neighborhood went downhill January the 1st, they sold for 40% off, you can't use it till the next year. And always research your neighborhood and keep that information, because when you notice the neighborhood going down, the next year you're ready to go do your appeal because they've dropped. And that's another thing, people need to keep up with what's going on in their neighborhood and around their properties, because it makes you do a better job of doing your own appeal. Any other questions? Don't forget there's free ice water back in the bucket. Go ahead on the back row.
If we wanted to use you, how far in advance of the deadline do we need to contact you?
the sooner the better. I prefer at least a week before the deadline if I can get it, because I need time to do the paperwork. Or if you're interested and you want to take a contract with you, she's got blank contracts, you can take it with you and send it later if you decide you get interested in it.
And you do absolutely every step of it, you do nothing.
Yes, all you got to do is give me your assessment and sign an authorization letter, and from that point on, I do everything. Thank everybody for coming. Go ahead.
This card says your PO box is 1133. If you tell me that $243.
I got 2 P.O. boxes. You need either or. If it's money, you can do either or, you know. But just like Vandy, you mind me telling about your properties? I did 6 properties of Vans, 2 months ago? May the 5th. My average drop was 45% on each property. He's a witness to the fact. You don't do that on every one of them, but if you get it lowered, guys, it doesn't matter if your property is valued at $100,000 and you get it down to 96. Go back the next year to get a little bit more. Your goal is to get it as low as you can. The appraiser's job is to get it as high as you can. It's a struggle between the two of you. But who's going to speak up for you if you don't? Speak up for yourself. Don't be afraid. Do not get intimidated. I get a little Alabama blood and transfuse it into you. You don't have enough sense to get intimidated. Go ahead, KB.
If it's nothing sold in your subdivision or neighborhood, you want to go in about a 3-mile area around that.
Good point you brought up. If nothing in your neighborhood sold, you got a tough one. Because I've had people in Cobb County that I personally know that would bring me their assessment. I'd go pull up the neighborhood. The neighborhood, nothing is sold in 5 and 6 years. Those neighborhoods have maintained value, and you might as well be running your head in the brick wall, because if nothing is sold in the neighborhood, the values have maintained, everybody's still living there. That is a tough one to deal with.
Well, the flip side of that then, there's a lot of them in my neighborhood that is valued less than mine. What I do, just use that.
Yes, that's where you would go on uniformity. You would want to argue uniformity, that you're not uniform with your neighborhood. And when you do your evidence, look at the square footage, square foot them out, and kind of get a little technical with your square footage. And call me, I'll be glad to kind of walk you through some of the stuff of what to do and how to do, because you can go on uniformity by itself.
I'm one of them old retired folks that needs some help.
I don't know if I should say this, but it looks like almost all the houses in Clear Creek have doubled their property.
Yes. I've had quite a few phone calls where their property has doubled.
That first time you sat down with the 3 people that the grand jury appointed, and they agreed to a number, how often do you feel like that's the number to stick with, or they're going to appeal it and you want to do more?
If BOE sets the number, that number goes to the appraisal department. Here's the BOE's decision. The appraisal department says we accept it or we don't accept it. If
Do
they
you have a pretty good feel when you walk out of there if they're going to accept it or not?
Anytime you're dealing with government, never get a good feeling. All right. In Douglas County, status quo, if you get more than 15% drop, you can look out. You're going to get that notice that says we're going to Superior Court. I did 18 properties one day, and out of 18, they took me to court on 6 because they didn't like the value I got it lowered to. Douglas is notorious for that, more so than a lot of other counties. And like I said, every county is different. Every appraiser is different. James is the head appraiser in Paulding. Benny's head appraiser in Douglas. Each guy operates his own system the way he has a lot of effect on the way his department operates. They do have laws to go by, and don't be afraid to talk to these guys. I talk to them, I argue with them and talk to them, and respect them. But that number, generally if you 10 to 15%, you don't go to court. But you get a whopping 45 or 75% at BOE, look out, because they're going to look at it, and the famous quote is, page and change. Here's the famous quote. The grounds for the appeal are as follows. Now keep in mind we was arguing value, not uniformity at BOE. Uniformity in values for other similar properties in Douglas County was apparently not given adequate weight and consideration in the arriving at the Board of Equalization's decision. When we argued, uniformity never was brought up, but yet they're appealing to Superior Court on uniformity. And I use that phrase too. They use it, I use it. I send a letter back and I take them to court that adequate weight wasn't given to my evidence. Like I said, it's like checker game, guys. You got to learn which way to slide the checkers. But this, 99% of the time in Douglas County, when I get taken to court, this is the same sentence on every one of my notice to appeal to the Superior Court. But don't let it intimidate you if you get this. And if you do your own appeal and you get it lower and they take you to court, you can hire me to come to be your mediator. I don't mind mediating for you. Renee, I'll tell you, I'll argue with a fence post if I don't think it's standing up straight.
Oh, half of these people in here will tell you that. Anybody that knows him.
James will tell you, I'll argue with a fence post more than James.
Yeah.
If I think I'm going to get the value lowered just a little bit. But guys, understand, I'll be glad to help you, and a lot of my help is free of charge. If you call me on the phone to ask me a question, I'll be glad to guide you or help you. There's no charge for that.
One more thing, tell us again how the board, who are the people on the Board of Equalization?
Board of Equalization is actually a group that's appointed by the grand jury. And they're appointed for different, I think it's a 3-year term. Is it a 3-year term, James? 3-year terms they're appointed for. And generally there's a chairman out of the group, but they are appointed by the grand jury, and they work under the supervision of the clerk of Superior Court. A few years ago, they were under the tax assessor's thumb, but they were taken out from up under the tax assessor and placed under the clerk of court. So if you got any grievance about BOE, you go see the clerk of Superior Court. And I have been to see the clerk. In most every county.
So,
Yes, sir.
how does one get appointed to the board? And how do they decide who these members are?
That I do not know, but I do know once you're appointed, you do have to go through a process. And another thing you might want to do is, a lot of times, if I think the people on BOE haven't been educated, I ask for the certifications that they're all certified to be on BOE, that they know what they're doing. I have had BOE people to go to sleep during the hearing, sitting on the other side of the table, literally go to sleep. Because a lot of them are old folks like me, retired. They'll doze off on you in a heartbeat.
Now, who do those 3 people appeal their taxes to?
They can also go if they want to. Most of them don't. I have had employees in other counties hire me to appeal theirs where they work, because they work there and they don't want to go fight with BOE in the county they actually work in. So James, I'll do your house if you want me to.
But there's more than one group of Board of Equalization.
Yes, there's typically 2 to 3 groups. Cobb's got like 5 BOEs. Douglas County's got 2 or 3. And a lot of the people on BOE stay on it for a lot of years. They get paid by the hour to hear the hearings. And I think they get $25 an hour to sit and listen to us argue. So they're happy to get 25. Most of them, I think, it's 25 an hour. So it might be a good job, John. If you want a part-time job, get on BOE. I'll take you to lunch about every 2 weeks if you help me.
How many boards does Spalding have?
Paulding, James, isn't Homer the only chairman now? Or is it 2 chairmen?
They usually run 2 boards.
2 boards? Because I know one of the guys just retired, and I don't know if they've got another chairman for him. But another thing, if you're going to appeal, and you know what board you're going before, try to go hear that board and sit in, and you can call the BOE secretary and say, I want to know what day this board has got appeals. You want to go sit in front of and watch how the board operates that you got to sit in front of. Because it's very educational to sit there and know how they are and their personalities, because their personalities do affect it. And I try to make friends with all of them. Come on, throw a few more at me. Well, I appreciate all of you coming. Was it worth your time to come, and did you get enough information? Next time I'll charge $10 a piece and we'll get the air conditioner on. But guys, understand, whatever you do, just try to do a professional job at it. And when you go to BOE, lay your evidence out in a professional manner. And another thing that I'll tell you, when you present to BOE, it's best to make 3 sets of your evidence and hand a set to each person and number every page. Like if I'm on page 1, I said I'm on page 1. Here's the sales date. Here's the value it sold for. Here's the heated square foot. And another thing, if you got a house that was built in 1980, you want to try to find 1980, 78 to 82 houses. So your criteria has got to tighten up. And because if you give them 1 set of evidence and they're shuffling it, they get lost in the shuffle. If each one has his own set, it makes life easier. And if you want to be real nice, you can make a 4th set and hand it to the appraiser if you hadn't already gave him a set.
Roy,
Yes.
we'll be posting your video on the Stop Paulding County Airport Expansion Facebook page. So if anyone would like to go there and review it, it'll be up hopefully tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well, it seems people do not want to leave.
We're not ready to leave, she said.
The people don't want to leave.
We got plenty of, call it purified water back there. It's not a duck here, but it's clear water. You can have a cold drink of cold water. Do get you a water, because that thing was 100 pounds tucked it in here out the truck.